Well, last week was a tough one for housing market data amid rising mortgage rates and recession fears. We saw builder sentiment for single-family homes slump, and another key survey showed home builder cancellation rates doubling since April. So, are we in a housing recession? Joining us now is Christopher Meyer, Paul Milstein, professor of real estate at the Columbia Business School. Great to have you on the program today. Christopher, tell us about kind of how you're viewing the housing market dynamics right now. Supply, if it's coming down, might mean that prices would remain elevated despite some of the steam that we've seen taken out broadly.
So the short answer is yes, we are in a recession, especially considering the data that he just cited. Home builders are scaling back and they're starting to feel pressure from shareholders, especially these larger home builders and these home building companies, because nobody is buying homes, especially when you're considering that the Fed continues to raise the rates in order to ensure that they tamper down on inflation. And honestly, I think the jobs are next. But let's continue to hear what he has to say.
Yeah. Hey, Brian, thanks for having me. I would say first, it's definitely going to take, the rising rates are taking a lot of the steam out of the housing market. There may be a little bit of steam left, but not a lot. So I do think we are going to see, and we're already seeing, home prices slow, the growth to near zero across the country. And
look at what we're looking at right here. U.S. average 30-year fixed mortgage rate up 25 basis points over the last week. The home builders are saying that we in a housing recession. At first, they couldn't sell enough homes. They couldn't build enough homes. They're even seeing cancellations from people who they thought they had orders from, and they're not participating. I see home builders all in an area that's starting to slow down on building out the homes and clearing out the different types of land that they purchased from the communities and the local municipalities, and they're not building homes. People that have homes on the market can't even sell them. I went and looked at a home the other day that I was looking to invest in, and I actually was live streaming, or not live streaming, but I was recording a video and I dropped it. And I was talking to the neighbor, and I said, how long has that house been on the market that was next door to him? And he said, oh, it's been on there for a while. I said, what is the sentiment of the home of the seller? He said they feel like they missed out, because they're having to continue to reduce the prices in order to accommodate potential buyers. Potential buyers can't afford homes. The cost of buying a home it's egregious. And then on top of that, most home buyers not only can't afford the mortgage payment, but they're having to get at least 30-year mortgage payments, which is stupid in itself, anybody that goes and get a 30-year mortgage payment. And then they can't afford the property taxes and the insurance on top of it. And so, I don't know. It's pretty interesting.
Some of the hotter markets, we're starting to see prices fall a little bit, which is not surprising given what we saw over the previous couple of years.
Now, at the same time, all of those things might point to a slowdown in the housing market, but a lot of people who are wondering, is this going to bring the affordability of homes down to a level where I can actually get into the market here? How does this compare to what we've seen in previous cycles? Because it seems like, by and large, you're still seeing a relatively hot housing market, depending on where specifically geographically you might be looking, right?
Right. So from an affordability perspective, this might be almost the worst time you could buy.
From an affordability perspective, this is amongst the worst times that you can buy. I told people 3 years ago, 2-3 years ago, I said, I'm not buying anything. The only thing I'm focused on is making sure I pay off the properties that I already have and then reinvesting in those properties in order to increase my net worth. Because I don't plan on ever selling the homes. I'm going to hold on to my real estate forever, right? But people laughed, and then they had this fear of missing out, and you have a ton of people that jumped into homes, and now the ones that jumped in at the lowest rates feel trapped. And the reason that they feel trapped is because they bought too much house, but at the same time, they got the lowest rates. So it's no way that they can really get rid of the house, because the house has already, the value of the home has already started to decrease. So they underwater. Think about this. You feel trapped if you bought a home within the last 2 years, because you paid, some of these people were paying over $50, $100, and $150,000 over asking price. They never got an inspection. They ran into a crib. Listen, if you were a seller and you were trying to get rid of a home and you had some things to fix up, but you wanted to save some money and be able to get well over asking price, last 2 years was the time to do it. If you were a buyer, it was time for you to sit. Now, a lot of people, listen, not only is the housing market going through a recession, builders are stopping to build, but you have the perfect storm because over 3.8 million people are about to get evicted over the next 2 months, anticipated according to the U.S. Census Bureau. It's looking bad out here.
Because mortgage rates have spiked quite a bit. We're back at the level they were, in 2009. So we're talking 13 years ago was the last time mortgage rates were this high. But at the same time, home prices and sellers are still hoping to get for their home what they
There
would
is
have
no
gotten
affordable
3
housing,
or 6 months ago. And so, as a buyer, part of the reason you're seeing contracts cancel and homes sitting on the market starting to sit a lot longer is buyers are looking at this and saying, well, at these rates I don't want to pay these prices, or I can't afford to pay these prices, and sellers are still sticking, and that makes it a tough time to be a buyer right now.
And more importantly, the rate of inflation or the affordability of a home is becoming less because it's more expensive to own a home. And on top of that, earnings and how much you make at your job has not kept up with the rate of inflation. And so anybody that was saving their money, anybody that was looking to purchase a home, you're caught in a catch-22 because rents are going up, right? And the only people that are really winning are the people that are taking advantage of those that are in duress, and then landlords. Because landlords are charging what they want because there's a home shortage. And at the same time, builders are not incentivized to build any more homes because of the interest rates that are rising and the prices. And it's just the perfect storm right now. Everybody is losing except for the landlords. They are the ones that's winning.
Now, how about for a renter? Because we've seen anecdotes. I mean, we're both in New York City, and we don't need to talk to too many people to realize just how brutal it is out there to rent. How do the higher mortgage rates and the state of the housing market also bleed into the dynamics that we're seeing for people that don't have the capital to buy a house at all and don't have any other choice but to rent?
So I think the housing market is really segmented quite a bit from the rental market. So people who are looking for, for houses or, for apartments to rent in New York, interest rates, movements in the housing market aren't impacting them at all. But I will say that for, some of the same reasons we're seeing the economy slow down, we've seen, households under a lot of pressure because, oil prices have gone up a lot, even if they kind of started to come in a bit, food, other parts of inflation are high. We're definitely seeing sort of demand for rents start to soften a little bit. So it's not saying that rents are going to fall anytime soon. But it does suggest that I think rental growth rates are also starting to slow for some of the same reasons that we're seeing the housing market also start to slow.
The thing about it is that rental rates have grown so significantly. There's parts of the country where rental rates are 95% higher than they were a year or even 2 years ago. And now they're starting to get these people up out of these properties so they can increase the rent and charge what they want. And in New York City specifically, it's become largely unaffordable for somebody that lives by themselves, making $100,000 a year for them to be able to afford an apartment, a one-bedroom apartment there. They got to get a roommate. They got to get a roommate.
Now, kind of shifting back to the housing market itself, are you seeing any sort of, obviously demand still remains strong, but, one interesting thread that we have been talking about through the post-pandemic period was the inclusion of a lot of institutional buyers, right? A lot of attention, for example, on BlackRock going into some neighborhoods and then snatching up properties. Is that still something that you're observing here? What's the scale of that? How significant is it?
There were markets where 30, 35%, even 40% of home purchases were being done by investors, some of whom were looking to rent, many of whom were just looking to flip, so-called iBuyers in the market. I think those people are going to have a lot of trouble. Even during the best of times, iBuyers were barely able to make a buck when home prices were going up 15% a year or more. And I think those buyers are going to have houses on the market that are going to be, coming back at a discount. So I do think some of those institutional buyers are going to face challenges in the market, trying to get rid of them. but I don't think that's going to make it a buyer's market from from a homeowner, from somebody aspiring homeowner perspective, because they're still facing, really high mortgage rates relative to what they were before. So net, I think that it's just going to be a tough market for almost anybody who's looking to sell right now, but it's also a tough market for people looking to buy,
which means that there's a recession on our hands. People are also having to compete against institutional buyers, such as BlackRock, who is looking for the housing market in order to be able to park money. Where else can you get this good of a rate of return and a stabilized investment, such as real estate? You just park it in homes. Now, people looking to flip homes, which is who he was talking about in iBuyers, are going to have a much tougher time. But as far as institutional investors, listen, the average person is competing against so many different things in order to be successful in this country when it comes to real estate and buying a home, that if you are not operating from a position of power, which means that you need to have a decent amount of income, and it has nothing to do with credit score. You got to have a decent amount of income. You have to have business acumen to understand how money works. And then you have to have perfect timing. You're going to be left out in the cold and you're going to be struggling. I want to know y'all thoughts. Let me know in the comments. If you need to get in touch with me, email me at Anton Daniels 413@gmail.com, and then I'm going to get you scheduled for a Zoom call or a personal call. In addition to that, make sure you tap into the Patreon. That link is in the description as well as pinned to the top of the chat. I just dropped the full interview for Charleston White in there, only for Patreon members only. It is not available to the general public. You guys are going to love and enjoy that. It is so much fire. People are raving about it because I think I brought the best out of me. But I want to know what your thoughts are in the comments about the affordability rate of what's going on, and if there's a recession, and if you're feeling it, and if you are looking to buy a home, do you think it's turned into being a buyer's market or a seller's market, or do you think that they're both suffering at the hands of what's going on in the perfect storm that you see happening right before your eyes? I love you guys. I appreciate you. I'm going to talk to you later. Peace.